Hi, Philip Thompson. I'm an independent researcher. What's the role of special economic zones in these top 20 port cities?
So special economic zones and free trade zones are actually, I would tell you, morphing. I'm not sure I have a complete answer. I think what we have seen is they don't always work. And it really depends on the commodity and the structure of the special economic zones. It's a little bit like trusted trader programs where the benefits are espoused, but the output isn't necessarily what it needs to be. So I should explain to those who don't know what FTZs are, which is basic free trade zones or special economic zones that allow you to add input, allow you to add value, and the product is not taxed until the product is finally sold. We've been somewhat bullish on the opportunity, us and our traditional competitors as well as brokers, but we haven't found a model that really delivers the value that it should. So again, under the TPP, we think is an opportunity once it's equalized to create a new model within the special economic zone FTZ paradigm.
And I'll just follow up a little bit with that. There's, to your point, people are always trying to figure out how to use these things. So you can actually bring oil into a foreign trade zone and export gasoline if there's a tax reason to do that, or if there's a duty reason to do that. So you can bring in products that you might use to make chocolate, make the chocolate in the zone and export it out if the tariffs and duties are lower to do that. So there's all sorts of things that can be done. In Miami, we do a fair amount of importing into these zones and then exporting out to Latin America. Miami sort of is the shopping cart for Latin America. Miami traditionally, until this year, had the largest trade surplus, probably 16 of the last 20 years, because a lot of what comes into Miami and then is immediately shipped to Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Colombia, etc. And so foreign trade zones are used quite a bit there for various purposes.
Palmer with Politico. This is kind of a political question, so answer it however you think. But I just wondered, I mean, given that Hillary was pulled to the left on TPP during the primary election, how easy do you think it is going to be for her to move towards the center and, if not actively support TPP, at least send some sort of signal that she wouldn't mind it being approved?
Give a politically correct answer, since I represent a bank and we don't really have a position necessarily on the politics. And again, I should say on the politics, I don't have a dog in the fight. So when I provide an analysis, it's one that I think it hopefully would be objective. In terms of Hillary, no one really believes that she's against free trade. And that's the nature of politics and politicians. You say what is necessary to get elected, and then when you get elected, you change your tune. For how she can manage this, my hope is that we get it approved this year, and I think it's quite likely. It's still quite likely that we will get it done. Hopefully during the lame duck session. If it happens then I think for her it would be an easy solution. She doesn't have to necessarily renege on that agreement, which I think, again, she favored it before. So I do believe that if it gets passed, and she probably doesn't have to say anything more about it, and just accept it as fait accompli if and when she becomes president. I think, and I'll go on the other side, for Trump, it probably is a bit harder for him to be tugged back to the center, because he has taken such an entrenched position I wouldn't necessarily say to the right, because if you think of it to the right, the right is for free trade. So I'd probably say more populist or nationalist position on trade. It's much more difficult for him to hold that row and move back to the center.
He and Bernie were somewhat similar on trade.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're somewhat for different reasons. They're somewhat similar on trade. And what I think the difficulty for him will be is the fact that his party is for free trade, Ryan is for free trade, McConnell is for free trade. And I think hopefully for him, once we come out of the convention, we have a more palatable, more acceptable position on international trade and on TPP. Because again, trade is one of the issues where we've had support from both sides.
My guess is she'll figure out a way to do it, but it is going to be interesting to watch, isn't it? Because she initially was for it, and then has, had to. I mean, there was years ago when Lula was first running for president of Brazil, and then he was elected, and he sort of was a more moderate. Once he was elected, they said politics is a little bit like the violin. You pick it up with your left and you play it with your right. But
I like that. Doug, I would just highlight another dimension, which is not really the domestic politics side of things, but the United States didn't start this fight on TPP, right? New Zealand, Chile, and others saw the vision, and the U.S. latched onto that vision. So those other countries, including Vietnam, are still seeing the opportunity, and I think they're actually charging ahead a little bit faster than the United States in ratifying. And I don't have a crystal ball, but I would tell you that they've tasted the elixir and see the opportunity and are not going to let the opportunity go. Whether, I know there are mechanisms in there that the United States has to ratify for it to come into effect, but they spent 5 years excruciatingly negotiating provisions that they believe would be helpful to their economies. So that's with or without the United States. And I think the countries that are not in TPP are standing on the sidelines, not believing that the United States is going to miss this opportunity.